Hello friends, and welcome to Escaping the Mouse with your host, me, Breck Roll. Alright, if you've been watching the vlog for a while, and especially the live streams, you've known over the last couple of years I've picked up a number of clocks that I've inherited from different members of my family. And you know, like I said, if you've listened to the live streams, they all go off at the same time at noon, and it sounds like the beginning of Back to the Future. But I've talked about the clocks a little bit in the past, but I want to go a little bit more into detail today, show you each of the clocks, and kind of tell you their story and some of my memories with them. So this is the clock that I've actually owned the longest. It isn't the oldest clock in the collection, but the one that I've owned the longest. This one belonged to my grandparents on my mom's side. I don't know how long it is they had it, but I remember every time I'd go to their house that I was always the one that wound it, because I really enjoyed winding it. It was fun to listen to, and it was in their house for as long as I can remember. In fact, there's this little shelf here beneath it that my grandfather built to hold it. And so when my grandmother passed away in 2001, I inherited the clock and the shelf. And this has been, like I said, this one was in my house for many, many years in California, and I'm glad that I have it back now. This is the one that ended up going to the shop about a year and a half ago when one of the chimes broke, and it took the guy like a year and a half to get it fixed. But it's good to have this one home. This one always reminds me of my grandparents and a lot of the good times I had with them. Now this clock was actually a gift to my parents from my grandfather. This was my mom's dad. Towards the end of his life, he decided that he wanted to do some things for the family to be remembered by. He bought and built himself a grandfather clock that was in my grandparents' house until they both passed away. And he also wanted to buy one for each of his kids. And so that was my mom and my uncle. And he bought the clock. He bought all three of them, I believe, at once. He assembled the one that would go into his house, and then he was going to start working on the ones for my mom and my uncle. But before he could do that, he got sick with cancer and he passed away. He was a miner his whole life, and I think he just inhaled a whole bunch of stuff that he probably shouldn't have in those mines, and that ultimately did him in. And it was sad, you know, we kind of have the clock to remember him by, but it also would have been really fun to have had him assemble it. But what it did do is it created a fun memory for my father and I, because we assembled it. And so that was something that my dad and I had together that became an important memory for me. And of course, when my mom passed away, I got this thing. And you remember, I brought this thing home with me in the back of a van from California back to Texas when I came back in January. And when I got home, it wasn't working right. It was missing a couple of the numbers. It wasn't chiming at all. And I actually took this thing apart. I took the clock out of the enclosure and figured out what the problem was. It turned out one of the missing numbers that had popped off, there were two of them that were missing. One of them was just in the bottom of the clock enclosure, but the other one somehow had gotten into the mechanism. And when I took the clock out and put it on just kind of a rack that I could operate the clock outside of the enclosure and just let it run for a while, eventually it just walked that piece out. And the next morning I walked out and that missing number was sitting on the floor, and all of a sudden the clock worked perfectly from then on. But I'm very, very happy to have this one, because this one has been in my parents' house since the early 80s, because my grandfather passed away in 1982. So he died at a very young age. And like I said, this clock was in their house even before he passed away, because they knew at the end he wasn't going to probably be able to finish it himself. So I think the clock got sent to us, and we had it assembled, I believe, by the time he ultimately succumbed. But this clock has always been kind of a fun clock for me. I've loved this clock because, like I said, it was in the house that I lived in for many, many years. I love the fact that it has this cool little moon dial thing on the top here, so you can tell the phases of the moon. And it's just a really beautiful grandfather clock. So yeah, I love this one. Now this clock here is the oldest clock in my collection. You'll remember this is another clock I brought back from California when my mom passed. This one is made by the Gilbert Clock Company in Winstead, Connecticut. The place, don't even bother looking for them there. They're not there anymore. They were building clocks, kind of affordable at the time, mantle clocks like this that people could afford to have in their house. Now this one was purchased by my great-grandparents on my mom's side. This is my mom's mom and her husband. That was Edith and Swan Eklund, who, like I said, are my great-grandparents, and they bought this one 140 years ago. Now this one was a clock that, like I said, it was, I'm not even sure what the path was that ultimately led to it ending up in my parents' house. My uncle, my mom's brother, told me at one point that it was in his bedroom, and my mom somehow got it at some point, probably when her mom passed away, and it was in their house for a while. When my mom moved into her apartment and into her second apartment, she had it there, but she never ran it because she said it was too loud for the tiny apartment. So it basically just sat dormant from basically the entire time from my dad died until I got it. And by the time I got it, there was a problem. The mainspring had broken, and the glass itself was cracked in the process of moving it here. So I found that great little clock guy in North Waco, and he did real good work on this, and this clock is working pretty well. I got to bring it back to him right now, I think, because there is a little bit of a problem I want to talk to him about, but I don't think it's serious. I think it's probably just an adjustment, and I believe that this clock has many, many years to go in its life. Like I said, I love having this one. This is probably the oldest thing I have in my house. That's in terms of something that belonged to a family member. Yeah, I got rocks that are older than this, but in terms of something that's a family heirloom from this far back, I don't think it goes any further back than this. Now this is really the only clock I have that probably doesn't qualify as an antique. This is just a beautiful, authentic, German-made cuckoo clock. Now the story behind this one belonged to my father, and it was in his office for many, many years. Once my parents both retired, especially my dad, they spent a lot of time traveling, and they traveled the world a lot in their final years when they were still active enough that they could do that. One year they went with some friends to Germany, and Germany and Poland and all around the area there, and they made an agreement between themselves that they could each buy something really, really nice as a souvenir. And I don't even remember what it was my mom got. My mom, at the time, my mom was sort of into these little figurines by a sculptor named Yadro. And she was collecting stuff like that. It may have been something like that. She may have found some figurine that she loved in Germany and decided she wanted to bring that home with her. But this was what my dad chose, and this was just completely out of character for him, because I don't remember him ever talking about cuckoo clocks before, but he really loved this one, and I love it too. I love the animation on it. The little guys at the table over there, when the chimes are going off, they're banging their beer steins on the table. The little people in the window up there are dancing around, and you can see the little bird coming out. There's all sorts of just really fun animation on this one, and it's a very elaborate piece. And this is another one that I had to go in and have some repairs done, because there was something got knocked out of alignment a little bit, and what would happen is when the chimes would go off, they would go off and then they wouldn't stop. So it was supposed to cuckoo 10 times, it would cuckoo 200 times, and it just wouldn't stop. And I brought that in and let Moses look at it, and he was able to make an adjustment, and it's worked perfectly ever since. So I really love this clock too. This one really kind of reminds me of my dad, because he was the person that had this, and this was always in his office and in the final years of his life. So this is a really nice clock, and definitely glad I have that. Alright, so I know this was a little bit different of a vlog for me, but a number of people on the live streams have talked about the clocks and stuff like that, and I thought I wanted just to kind of tell a little bit of stories of each of them and go through all that, because it was kind of fun thinking about that again, and I hope you enjoyed hearing about them. So anyway, that's the end of this vlog. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you next time on Escaping the Mouse. Good night.